Hi guys, it has come to my attention recently that there are drummers out there who do not know or understand the difference between ruffs and three-stroke ruffs. And I did a video a while back where I talked about the difference between ruffs and drags, and that was fairly controversial, and you may or may not agree with me on that one. But the difference between ruffs and three-stroke ruffs is pretty incontrovertible. They're totally different rudiments because they have a completely separate sticking. However, I really have heard quite a few people confusing ruffs and three-stroke ruffs, or essentially assuming that they're the same thing. So I'm going to attempt to clear that up beyond a shadow of a doubt in this video. So whether you believe that drags and ruffs are different is sort of irrelevant to this because you can insert either one and they're still going to be different from three-stroke ruffs, so just keep that in mind. There are, of course, also four-stroke ruffs and five-stroke ruffs, and etc. And those are, of course, different because they have a different number of strokes. So we're really just looking at the three-stroke ruff and the regular ruff because those have the same number of strokes, and the notation is quite similar, although, like I said, they have a different sticking. So a ruff is a double stroke and then a single stroke. So two rights and a left, or two lefts and a right. And a three-stroke ruff, by definition, is three single strokes. They look the same in the notation, they sound the same in execution, but they are played with a different sticking, and that is why they are different rudiments. So there are books out there which teach this incorrectly. They'll label a regular ruff as a three-stroke ruff. And I mean, technically they're not wrong because a ruff has three strokes in it, but realistically the three-stroke ruff is a separate rudiment, so we're not just being overly specific with the number of strokes in the ruff. When we say three-stroke ruff, we are trying to convey that it is single-stroked rather than double-stroked. That's why there are two separate names. There are other names we could use that would potentially be more clear. We could call this a tap ruff, a single-stroke three, a single three, just to abbreviate that, or sometimes even a treble stroke. But no matter which of these names you're using, you're talking about three single strokes in quick succession. In the ruff, or even if you want to get a little bit less specific and call it a drag, that's two lefts and a right, or two rights and a left. It's not single strokes. So that is the basic information. But if you want to keep watching, well, I'm going to go through 14 different books which have both a three-stroke ruff and a regular ruff in the book. Also, a few of these books have a three-stroke ruff, a ruff, and a drag, but that's beside the point because that was from my last video. But in some cases, you can find authors who do believe, in fact, and I think correctly, that these are three different rudiments. But the point here being that they list both a three-stroke ruff in singles and a regular ruff with a double stroke. So this section is really just for the skeptics, so I'm going to do it fairly quickly and not really dwell on each individual author or book. But David Hazeltine in 1810 listed a three-stroke ruff, also a three-stroke roll. Ashworth in 1812 listed a quick like a drag and also a half drag. Samuel Cooper in 1861 listed a three-stroke ruff and the ruff. Elias Howe in 1861 listed the ruff old style and then just the ruff. Hart in 1862 listed three quick beats and a three roll. Bruce and Emmett in 1862 listed a tap ruff, the ruff, and a half drag. That's one of those three different rudiment books. Nevins in 1864 listed ruffs and a half drag. Harry Bauer in 1898 listed the tap ruff as well as the ruff. A book that's anonymously authored, but it's published by Hawks & Son, 1904, lists a treble stroke, an open drag, and a close drag. It's another one of those three fur books. Sanford Moeller in 1925 lists the three-stroke ruff, the ruff, and a half drag, another book with all three. Paul Yoder in 1935 lists the three-stroke ruff and the ruff. Gene Krupa in 1938 lists the single-stroke three and the ruff. William Ludwig in 1942 lists the three-stroke ruff and the ruff. And finally, Buddy Rich in 1942 lists the three-stroke ruff and the ruff. So there you go. So not only is it pretty commonly understood by most drummers that the three-stroke ruff is single strokes and the ruff is double strokes, but those 14 prominent book authors from the 19th and 20th centuries thought, well, we better list both because they're definitely separate. And in some cases, they even separate out the drag, although even if you lump the drag and the ruff together, they're still different from the three-stroke ruff or any of its synonymous terms. So if you have any questions, let me know, but thanks for watching. I think we finally put to rest the fact that 3-stroke ruffs and ruffs. They're not the same thing. They're totally separate. Thanks, guys.